Hey everybody. For a minute there, I thought the day was slipping away and I missed the opportunity to share some thoughts on Tune Up Tuesday. And then I remembered it's still Monday. So welcome to Momentum Monday. Because I really wanted to share a thought that I was reminded of. And the thought is this: you never truly understand sometimes what you are starting when you start. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples from my life to help that I think do a great job of illustrating this idea of not really understanding what is being started when you start. So the first example I would give is fitness related. So about 14 years ago, my brother and I was just on a random, regular brother call talking about life and how things are going. And we got on this conversation around getting older, and we started to wonder, and we had this conversation, not a long one, about 10-15 minute conversation, wondering if it was possible for somebody in their mid 40s, late 40s, that if they did everything right, like 100% right, could they get back to their high school level physicality? Or were they just hard biological limits to what could be done no matter what? And it was a real interesting conversation. And the result of that was I was inspired to really go in hard on one of my 90-day transformation things that you hear me talk about all the time. And I thought if I used everything that I'd learned about physical fitness and nutrition and supplements and all this stuff, I was like, yeah, I think I could just, and I worked like a maniac and, just cut out all social life, just did nothing else but this one singular mission. I thought, yeah, I could probably make it happen. So I gave it a shot to see what would happen. And I said, in 60 days, I thought I could I created an arbitrary goal of less than 10% body fat. And thought I could knock that out in 60 days. And you know what? 60 days came and went. No, I could not. So I doubled down and made it 90 and extended it to 90s. Still could not. I was making progress, but it was slow going. Fast forward the clock about 6 months later, I was able to hit that goal. And it was just an arbitrary goal. Then had no meaning other than the fact that, hey, I found a way to do it. And it actually transformed how I approached at least the physical part of these personal challenges I do. I go way harder from that point forward than I had ever done up until that point. And I learned a lot about what worked, what didn't work, that whole thing. So that to this day, 14 years later, has been adjusted because of that one little random phone call that started this chain reaction. Another example I would give is business related. So about 20 years ago, maybe a little longer, I was helping a company launch a new product, a new technical product, and we needed to recruit and get a bunch of marketers to help with that effort. So one of the first 5 phone calls I made was one to the person that I knew would not be interested, right? He's never interested and always kind of downplayed everything and always had a lot of negative things to say about everything, right? So, but still, he was a smart person that knew a lot of people, and I made the phone call. And sure enough, negative, 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 not interested, not interested, not interested, won't work, won't work, won't work. But he said, but you might want to give this guy a call. It might be more up his alley. So I'm like, okay, great. I did. And long story short, fast forward the clock about a decade. Over the course of that time, that one fall created a sales channel that generated that company more than $30 million in revenue. The last example will be about I was at home one day and I was launching a side hustle. This was more than 20 years ago, or around 20 years ago, probably more than 20 years ago, because I don't think Jasmine was around yet. And I was launching a side hustle, side project. I keep those in play. And I went out to the mailbox, and there was a little flyer stuck in my mailbox of a person that was that had like a home cleaning business or something. And it wasn't me. They literally walked around and put it in every mailbox. And you know what? I walked into the house And something about that flyer bothered me. And here's what it was. I was like, man, here's a person that was willing to walk to every house in this community because they're that committed to their side venture. And I'm supposed to be doing my side venture. Long story short, I sat down that night. I made a little flyer, and at a minimum, I would think it was selling satellite systems. At a minimum, I was going to do what that other person, match that other person's level of commitment. And I went around to every house in the entire community. It was hundreds of houses with my little flyer. And you know what? One of the people that called me from that flyer more than 20 years ago to this day is one of my best friends in the world. So these are three examples. These are three examples of how you never really you may never really fully understand what you are starting when you start anything, especially when you start something that you need to commit to make it happen. It just starts this whole chain reaction in your world that I think goes outside your ability to perceive and understand it. I've come to call this idea in a different metaphor, the apple in the hand, the apple in the hand dilemma. So if you put an apple in your hand, there are some things you know for certain and you can prove for certain. There's one apple in your hand. You know that for certain. If you slice that apple open, you can literally count each individual seed and be 100% precise about that number. Those things you know absolutely, but here's what you absolutely don't know. You don't know if you planted all of those seeds, how many apple trees could grow from those seeds, and you definitely don't know how many apples those trees would then go on to produce over the years, and you definitely don't know how many seeds would be produced by all of those apples that have been produced by all of those trees that were produced by those seeds that you planted. The apple in the hand dilemma is a great way to remind yourself that you don't know the extent of what you're starting when you start anything meaningful. So I hope somewhere between these three life examples from my life or the apple in the hand, you find just a little reason to be inspired to get started.